Hi, my name's Paul Oliver. I'm a Curator of Vertebrates at the Queensland Museum. The museum's role is to function as a reference collection for understanding Queensland's biodiversity. The collection's used by lots of different people: scientists, students, teachers, and even artists. If you want to ask questions such as how many species do we have, where do they live, what are their adaptations to the environment, how are they responding to environmental change, this is the collection and this is the place where you come to ask those questions. Flight is the ability to remain in the air without any contact to the ground or any other surface. So lots of different groups of animals have evolved somewhat limited flight. To give an example, these gliders here. But there's only a small group of animals that have evolved what we call powered flight. That is the ability to take to the air and remain there at will. And of course, one of the best examples of that, something we see every day all around us, is birds. Powered flight has allowed birds to access a lot of habitats and a lot of opportunities that other animals find hard to access. They can forage for insects on the wing. They can reach inaccessible places such as cliff tops or the tops of trees really quickly and really easily. They can forage over water, such as hunting for fish, really easily and effectively. And they can also travel incredible distances. It's a common pattern in nature that to become really good or specialised at doing one thing, sometimes you may have to compromise in other areas. To fly, birds need to generate sufficient upward lift to compensate for the downward pressure of gravity. To do this, their bodies need to be both strong, but also as light as possible. To give one example, here we have two bones, one from a bird and one from a mammal. And when you pick these up, there's a striking difference. The mammal bone is over 4 times heavier than that of the bird. And that's because birds have evolved very specialised bones. They're basically made up entirely of airspace. But of course that creates an issue, as maybe that by being full of air, they'll be a bit weaker. So again, to compensate, birds have evolved these specialised struts that run across the insides of their bone. So in that way, they've evolved a compromise between the search for both reducing weight and also making their bones as strong as possible to allow them to fly. Another trade-off that comes with flying is that it can be extremely energy intensive. So it's for that reason that birds do need to eat a large amount. And this can make birds vulnerable. For instance, if they lose a key food resource at a particular time of year or in a particular part of their range, they can be extremely vulnerable. To give one example, there's a really beautiful little finch that many people in Australia keep as a pet called the Gouldian finch. And over the last decades, this species has declined a lot. And one of the reasons we think it's declining is that because of changed patterns of bushfire where it lives, some of the key grasses that it needs to feed and live are not available at particular times of year. So the population is collapsing. So one of the really interesting things about birds is if you watch them around you, different types of birds are flying in different parts of the environment. And what we've found is that linked to that, different types of birds do have different wing shapes. So to give this example here of this king parrot, you can see it's got relatively short wings and relatively deep wings. And that's a wing shape that is typical of birds that use complicated environments. This parrot, it lives under the rainforest canopy, so there's lots of obstacles that it has to fly around. So that's why it has this wing shape. But other types of birds can have very different wing shapes. Many species of birds do what's called soaring. That's where they use hot air currents that are rising off the ground, or wind, to stay in the air. And birds that do this tend to have very large wings that are often quite long, so they've got to maximise their ability to catch the upward moving air currents. There's some birds that fly long distances and often very fast, but are less manoeuvrable. They have wings that are somewhat intermediate between the long-winged soaring birds and the short-winged manoeuvrable birds.